This is Chris Collinsworth. Be sure to check out the PFF College podcast as our experts provide insight on all the league's top stories. Every game, every player, every play. Download and subscribe on iTunes or your favorite provider.
Hello and welcome to the Pro Football Focus Preview Podcast. Week 16 upon us. It might be the finals of your fantasy football league. It might be just another week of Mike's crappy bets. It might be just another week closer to the playoffs for Sam Monson. But we are here for you. Sam, how are you?
I'm good. It's getting towards Christmas. We're on the home stretch. We're eking our way towards it.
Mike, speaking of Christmas, what is your favorite Christmas song of all time?
Favorite Christmas song? That's tough. It's putting me on the spot because not really a big Christmas music guy. So I'd have to say none of them because I just don't enjoy it. Maybe Mariah Carey. What's it?
No, the sentence ends at Mariah Carey. You've already got the question wrong.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. I'll figure it out here.
I've always been a big Silent Nights guy.
It's got to be Fairy Tale of New York, doesn't it?
That's not bad either. You know, although I will say...
All I Want for Christmas Is You. That's what I was thinking of. Great song.
Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't redeem you any.
It's a good song. I'm not wrong.
The Love Actually version of that is decent. I'm not going to lie.
Love Actually, best Christmas movie. You should ask me that 100%.
No, the best Christmas movie is Die Hard. End of story.
Okay, the mere fact, Mike, you've lost your man card. Because Die Hard, it's not even close. Die Hard is the #1 movie. We're on a football podcast. You say, whether you believe it or not, you say it's Die Hard. You don't say Love Actually. Oh my!
Love Actually is fantastic, though.
Hey guys, you know what?
If you don't like Love Actually, that sounds like a problem with you, not a problem with me.
Hey Sam, can we do a little PFF promotion?
Sure.
Where everybody they can tweet us at PFF and of course at PFF_Mike and PFF_Sam with the hashtag the hashtag best Christmas movie, and we can hear who their best Christmas movie is, and then of course I like them to make fun of Mike in a nice way in 12 or less words.
Seems fair.
There you go. Some sort of PFF promotion. We'll talk about the winner next week. Let's get into the games of the week. Of course, we've got Mike's crappy bets coming up later on. We've got a bunch of games. We're not going to talk about tonight's game, of course. Although it is interesting, the New York Giants defense. I do want to touch on that for a second. This New York Giants defense, you guys just talked about it. I don't want to talk about the game, but the Giants defense they are playing some good ball lately.
We're not going to talk about the game except for this brief minute where we talk about the game, and then we'll go back to not talking about the game.
Right.
Yeah, they're good. I guess Janoris Jenkins, if he misses time, that's a blow for them. But otherwise, that defense is really well put together, and the offense has talent, and it's really just Eli Manning dragging them down at the moment.
I said it on, I think, this week's podcast or maybe last week's. That's the best secondary in the NFL. I mean, when you account for safeties and cornerbacks, because they go about 6 deep in players that are not even just above average players, that are good players. So that's no one else can keep up with that, especially the way Landon Collins has been playing. He's sneakily my dark horse pick for defensive player of the year because he's just been everything that they needed there on the back end from a year ago. It's complete night and day.
When we think of dark horse Super Bowl contenders, and it's interesting because the New York Giants back in 2007 and 2011 when they won it were both dark horses. I mean, neither one was considered, a front runner for the Super Bowl that year either. In what has to be considered kind of a wide open year, especially in the NFC, Dallas is the #1 seed. We've got a rookie under center. Seattle, obviously, without Earl Thomas, has shown its flaws. It seems like every team has some flaws. Could the New York Giants actually sneak through, Sam?
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, the defense is really good. The offense has some skill position weapons. Offensive line isn't great, especially, Eric Flowers at left tackle is bad. And Eli Manning has been an issue. But yeah, if they get a half decent run of play out of Eli Manning, that's all it takes for this team to go from being good to being a Super Bowl contender.
I agree.
Okay, well, we'll see how it plays out. Of course,
Agreed.
Christmas Day is the day of A couple of good games, of course. We've got divisional games: Baltimore at Pittsburgh, and the Ravens traveling to Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger's been somewhat shaky as of late. Last season, he finished the season off, in fantastic form. It hasn't been the case so far the last couple of games. Sam, how do you see this one playing out?
Not even just as of late for Roethlisberger. He's been iffy all season. I mean, it's not so much that the good games aren't there. He still had some good performances. It's that you get these clunkers every now and again where he just turns up and looks horrendous. And, last year it was almost consistently every week. It was the good Roethlisberger turned up, and obviously connected with Antonio Brown. You had that connection that was just ridiculously unstoppable. This year, it seems to lurch from one to the other. You get Roethlisberger turns up for a week. The next week, he goes completely missing and throws the ball more to defenders than he does to Antonio Brown. And this Steelers team for years has been perennially successful because they've always been able to rely on Roethlisberger and that offense being really good, and he's kind of carried them. This year, I mean, it's the same story in that they're going as far as he takes them. It's just that he's not consistently being the reason that takes them to wins anymore. He's laying an egg every now and again. It's costing them.
Yeah, the Steelers defense is actually what has impressed me over recent weeks. I think they've sneakily kind of been one of the better pass defenses in the entire NFL. Early in the season, I wasn't really a believer because of basically how bad their edge pressure was. They weren't getting anything from Jarvis Jones off the edge. They weren't getting anything from Arthur Moat. Like, those guys couldn't rush the passer at all. And all of a sudden, they started giving James Harrison more snaps. And then now they're getting pressure on quarterbacks. Stefan Tuitt stepped it up in the middle in terms of interior pressure. And now that secondary looks good, when they are getting pressure on the quarterbacks, because they're making, guys get the ball out quicker. They play a lot of zone coverage, one of the most zone-heavy teams in the entire NFL. And when, like I said before in this podcast, when you play zone coverage and quarterbacks have to get the ball out quickly, that's, to your advantage. So I think the Steelers defense in recent weeks is what has really carried this team more so than their offense, in my opinion.
Is sneakily the word of the day, Mike?
Probably. I've probably said it like 5 times now. I repeat myself a lot.
I like it. No, this is the podcast where we make fun of you. It's okay. It's usually me, or just me making fun of myself, or just making a fool of myself. But if there's an opportunity to make fun of you, it's actually much better for my ego. Let's look at the other side of the ball. Baltimore's offense. Just when it looked like Kenneth Dixon was taking over at running back, Terrence West had a pretty significant role last week. Dixon did get one in the end zone. Flacco's kind of, up and down. Season continues. But, somehow, some way, that offense gets it done. You talked about Pittsburgh's defense already. How does Baltimore's offense match up against them, Mike?
I think fairly well because of what they do on the interior in terms of, Jeremy Zuta at center and then Marshall Yanda at guard there. And like I said before, Javon Hargrave, very talented player, not a great nose tackle in terms of run defense. I think they'll be able to have some success running the ball. But then again, like I said, it comes down to their pass protection and Joe Flacco. If the Steelers blitzes are getting home, if they're getting guys, edge pressure off the edge is getting home, that's going to be the kiss of death for the Ravens offense. And it has been this year when Flacco, is get under pressure. It just has not performed.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. Flacco, actually, when he's been left to his own devices in a clean pocket, has been reasonably good this year. Passer ratings up in the 90s where it should be. But when he gets pressured, it drops to 58.1. His completion percentage nosedives under 50%. He's just been terrible when he's been pressured. So when that offensive line is 100% healthy and it's got all its starters together and they've been able to keep him upright, he's looked okay. And when pressure has got home, he's had real problems. The Ravens offense, I think, is interesting because they're one of the few teams in the NFL that still uses a fullback quite a lot. There's one fullback this year that has more than 300 snaps on offense, and the Ravens have that guy. And he's the only guy that's over 300. He's the only guy that's over 400. And what's interesting is that he plays in he's not just your old style lead blocking fullback where he just bangs it up the middle, takes on a linebacker, tries to blast him out of the hole, and that's all those guys do. The reason he's getting so many snaps is because he can play all over the offense. They can move him around. They can get some matchup advantages doing that. If nothing else, they can kind of probe the defense pre-snap by moving them around, seeing what they're doing, whether they're going to stay in man coverage, send a linebacker out to cover him, that kind of thing. And he'll block, he'll run the ball, he'll catch the ball. He's had a ridiculous reception a couple of weeks ago where he took the ball, broke a whole bunch of tackles, ran into the open field. So it kind of provides a very rare offense for this Pittsburgh defense to go up against, because most teams just don't run a fullback anymore.
So at the end of the day, who do we like, and what will be the deciding factor, Sam?
This is close, and it's one of those games that's a must-win in terms of the situation in that division. These sides are both fighting it out for the playoffs, for division supremacy. I think it's going to be pretty close, but I'm just leaning Pittsburgh almost entirely because they're at home in the game.
I'm going to say Pittsburgh as well. One matchup that I'm really going to be watching closely is basically Ronnie Stanley, the left tackle, going up against James Harrison, who I already mentioned. Stanley's actually turned it on really well of late. I think over the past 5 weeks, he's only given up something like 8 or 9 pressures. His pass protection has been much, much better than it was in the beginning of the season. Looks, much more comfortable, but he's still very, very susceptible to the bull rush. Basically James Harrison's, go-to signature move. That could be an issue. If he's getting the pocket collapse around Flacco, like I said earlier, that's not good for them. So I think Pittsburgh does win this because of that matchup.
I think the public perception of Pittsburgh is somewhat more favorable than the team has actually played. I do think their defense has been very good, but Ben Roethlisberger has not been very good. Now, if Le'Veon Bell can get 250 and 3, then they'll probably win the game, but I think Baltimore slows him down a little bit, and when it's all said and done, I actually like Baltimore on the road. I think this is going to be a field goal game, and in a field goal game, give me Tucker. Let's take a look at Kansas City.
Justin, rather than you, right?
Yes. I there's actually video of me, by the way. So obviously, I'm involved in poker. Then we did when we were in Pittsburgh. We went to we do these kind of like offshoot, like B-roll type fun things. Anyway, we went to a football stadium to all of us kick field goals and see how we would do. Needless to say, I was pathetic. It was awful. Now, I pride myself on being fairly athletic, but I did not know the proper method of how to kick a field goal. Once I was
Did you not play like soccer?
I never kicked a field goal. I don't know. I had no idea. Okay. I played soccer, so I kept kicking the ball, and it would just go like flying underneath the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's not the right way to do it. Anyway, they do not want me kicking field goals. But Justin Tucker, he's pretty good. Kansas City hosts Denver this weekend in the other game of the week. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs really blew a golden opportunity. Coming off of a win versus the Broncos, a win at the Falcons, and then they beat the Raiders. 2 road games, and then they beat the Raiders, and then they're up 14-0 at home against the Titans, and somehow figure out a way to lose that game. That is a tough loss, and a really bad loss at a bad time for this team. Mike, how does KC come back from this one? And I don't really want to get into what we saw last week, but what can they quickly fix this week against a tough Broncos team?
I'm not sure they need to really fix anything. I mean, the Titans are a good team. They're 8-6. You lose to a good team. I don't think it's, I don't think the sky is falling by any means in KC. The thing is, their offense just isn't built to, score 30 points. I don't care who they play. They're not an offense that's going to be explosive down the field. But at the same time, they're kind of an offense that's not built to get completely shut out. So against someone like Denver, they'll still probably score something like 17, somewhere in that range. And I think the way Denver's offense is playing of late, that's more than enough.
Yeah, this game. So I've been this week on Twitter, there's a lot of talk about Jack Conklin and how much help he gets from that Tennessee offense schematically, whether it's guys lined up to his side, whether it's full roll turns from the offensive line in either direction, either towards him to give him direct help from the guard or away from him that puts him onto a defensive tackle as opposed to an edge rusher one-on-one. And there's a lot of different ways that he's being schemed help within that Tennessee offense. But a lot of the same thing is true for Taylor Lewan on the other side. And it's kind of just what they're doing from a schematic point of view. Instead of putting all their players out into patterns as receiving options, they're using a lot of them to stay in and block. And it's just a different philosophical way of playing. But it's interesting to see because a lot of these offensive line guys like Jeff Schwartz, Duke Mayweather, and guys like that are very dismissive of Conklin because of all this extra help. And we've been kind of talking back and forth as, how much value you put on that help and how quickly you can turn that on, how quickly you can start to help a guy, because a lot of guys in the NFL are just left one-on-one on an island and they have to block these guys. Now, in the last game that these two met each other, this game became just a back and forth between two edge rushing monsters in Justin Houston and Von Miller. And they just took turns brutalizing the right tackles of Denver and Kansas City. And neither team really did anything at any point to stop that. I'm kind of curious to see if they change anything, having seen what a train wreck it is when they just leave their guy one-on-one against one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Or if we're going to see one of these teams go, what would really make the difference between us and the other team is if we figured out a way to stop that edge rusher kicking our ass and the other team didn't. And suddenly that turns a back and forth encounter into just one side being hammered the whole way. So I think that's the thing to watch, is how both right tackles get on against the guys that completely ate their lunch last time.
What did that whole Titans diatribe have to do with KC Denver?
Because Conklin gets help that these guys don't get.
Okay. All right.
It all a means to an end, Mike. It's a means to an end. One of the players that will have to deal with that incredible pass rush is Trevor Siemian. There was a story out somewhere, I wish I could give credit, but you can Google it if you want to, where it's basically suggesting that the Denver Broncos had some more quote-unquote long-term confidence in Trevor Siemian as of now, as compared to earlier in the season. And I guess I'll ask you, Mike, is there reason for optimism? Do you share that same long-term optimism that the Denver Broncos do? What are you seeing out of Trevor Siemian? And
I do not share that same optimism. He looks a lot like what Brock Osweiler looked like in that offense a season ago. Basically, hit the guys when they're wide open underneath, because he has two receivers in Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas that can create a lot of space and a lot of space underneath, but then basically just nothing in terms of down the field throws that are accurate and on the money, which once teams know that you can't push the ball down the field, once teams know that you're not going to get beat deep regularly, they just start squatting on those in routes. And I think that's what we've seen, squatting on those underneath and those intermediate routes. And I just don't think that Siemian's, made them pay for that sort of playing style.
I think their confidence in Trevor Siemian is a direct correlation to how much Paxton Lynch has seen the field. As soon as Paxton Lynch goes on the field, suddenly your confidence in Trevor Siemian skyrockets in comparison. Because as much as Lynch might be the future of that franchise somewhere down the line, from what we've seen, that future isn't anytime soon. So consequently, Trevor Siemian kind of has to be better than he is.
In fairness, I could probably bring a good analogy to the front. In my household, in the Tuckman household, if my wife were to ask my son to make dinner, and then instead said, "You know what, David, why don't you do it?" she would then finally have some confidence in me to make dinner. But
yeah, your ability in comparison would suddenly look fantastic.
Right, but only in comparison to a 3-year-old who would probably just end up burning himself. Speaking of KC, by the way, I wonder if they are flirting with fire and kind of playing with fire in the sense their last 6 games, they're 4-2. The point differential in the last 6 games, though, all 6 games decided by a total of 19 points. And in the NFL, when you're playing in cold weather and you're playing in conditions, in November and December, when you don't put away teams and you let them stick around like you did last week with the Titans, occasionally you are going to lose. Now, you might look at that and go, well, they're still 4-2. But you're talking about a team that needs these wins to make the playoffs. And you just look through it. They beat the Panthers by 3. They beat the Buccaneers by 2. They beat the Broncos by 3. They beat the Falcons by 1. Then they took care of the Raiders. And they've had the Raiders number all year. And then, of course, obviously they lose by 2 to the Titans. You say what you will, but the Chiefs, you kind of know that the game versus the Broncos and their last game versus the Chargers probably going to be close games. And I think they need to win both to win that division. To have a chance to win the division, I should say.
Yeah, I think they've been one of those teams. There's a few teams this year that have if you like playing with fire, the way you've been talking about, I think that's why it's so open this year. Is there's so many teams that have been either winning a bunch of these games or losing a bunch of these games, but they've all been close. And football is one of those games that can swing on a couple of plays here and there, and you can get a sequence of 5 of those games in a row where all those couple of plays bounce in your direction. That can easily reverse itself, or it can continue. So without any discernible difference in how that team is actually playing. So I think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about such a wide open field, because a lot of these teams that even have had big winning or losing streaks haven't been getting blown out of things or haven't been dominating people.
I think that sort of just comes with the territory of being a team that wins defensively. And when you win with a good defense, basically you can win by a touchdown and basically dominate the whole game. And I think that's what we've seen from the Chiefs. They have just a good enough offense to where, if they allow 17 points, they're going to score 20, and that's a W still. Whereas someone like the Falcons might score 35 and then allowing 25, 27, and it looks more impressive, but it's basically you're winning, and it's basically the same level of competency on one on defensively, one offensively.
By the way, on that point though, the Kansas City Chiefs, only 2 teams in the AFC have a better point differential than the Kansas City Chiefs. They're at plus 45 right now. Mike, who wins the game?
I think the Chiefs do, just being at home, and I still think that their defense, poses some issues for Trevor Siemian.
Yeah, I've gone with Denver this week, although I'm apparently the only person that has. This seems like the kind of game that after the way things went last week, that Denver defense could really stand up and be counted and have one of their best games and really make things difficult for that Chiefs offense.
I'll put it this way. I really am on the fence on this one. This is one of my bets of the week because I do think it's going to be a really close game, and we'll get into that later. I think I'm going to lean Kansas City. I think coming off a tough loss would be difficult for most teams, but I think with Andy Reid and Alex Smith guiding that ship, I think they'll bounce back and they'll win this one. Let's get into the third game of the week. This is another interesting one, in my opinion. Monday night, we have the Detroit Lions traveling to the Dallas Cowboys. Detroit coming off a tough loss against that vaunted New York Giants defense. Sam, what's the matchup to watch in this one?
And once again, we're gonna question the Detroit Lions, just like Lions fans are waiting for. Look, the Lions, I don't think were ever quite as good as that record was suggesting. I think they came up against a slightly better team in New York. I think Dallas are a slightly better team again. It's pretty much that simple. I don't think that the Lions defense is going to be able to stop that Dallas offense without Dak Prescott having one of those games where he just goes in the tank and threatens to turn the ball over a bunch, or Zeke Elliott puts the ball on the ground, and turnovers essentially is the only way I can see them slowing that offense down. And on the other side of the ball, they'll be able to do some damage themselves on offense. But I think that matchup with the Dallas defense against that Lions offense is a more favorable one than the other side is. So I just think overall this Dallas team is a better side than Detroit.
Mike, can you talk about for a second just Detroit's running game? Can they run the ball? Now, Theo Riddick has been out with an injured wrist or injured ankle. It might be an assortment of injuries. Who knows by week 15, week 16 of the season. But he has been out. I'm not sure right now. He's still questionable whether he's going to play this week or not. In his place, Dwayne Washington has kind of handled the ball. He has ran the ball. But last week, their run game was non-existent. Obviously, that was against a very tough New York Giants defense. But while Stafford and the Detroit Lions love to throw the ball, I think without Riddick to throw the ball out of the backfield, it's kind of like a pseudo running game. That offense is a lot more defendable.
No, I definitely agree. And although I don't think that run game's been, really at any point this year, a huge weapon for them, but I think the threat of Theo Riddick out of the backfield is what's been a weapon for them. Not having him would be, huge in this game because, Dwayne Washington, Zach Zenner, those guys are not near the receiving threats. They're not going to put any stress on those, Cowboys linebackers like Theo Riddick would. So that to me is the big thing. I don't. So I don't think that the running game, though, really going to make that much of a difference for the Lions with Riddick being out. It's more they're going to have to pass to win this one if they do expect to win.
Will they be able to pass against Dallas Cowboys secondary? Will Stafford have enough time to pass the ball?
I think you'll have enough time because this, he does have a fairly good pass blocking offensive line, and it's an offense that gets the ball out quickly. But it's can Marvin Jones, can Golden Tate, can Anquan Bolden separate against those Dallas corners? I think he'll have some success, but I don't think it's, light them up 350, 3-touchdown type success.
So who wins the game and why when it's all said and done? Sam?
Already went Dallas.
Yeah, you like Dallas. Mike?
I think it's definitely Dallas. I think this one could end up being a blowout, to be honest. I'll say this. DeAndre Levy being back is huge for that Detroit Lions run defense, but those guys up front they're going to get manhandled by the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. There's really no chance I see that happening any other, that matchup going any other way but Dallas just owning them. So I expect a big day from Zeke Elliott. And then if Zeke Elliott's having a big day, that's when Prescott ends up having his best days too. So I think that the Cowboys offense just rolls.
You are not saving us in the eyes of Detroit fans. Those guys already hate us, and now you're saying not only are they going to lose, they're going to lose in a blowout.
You know what? Listen, whether you
damn it, Mike.
It always amazes me how fans get really upset at analysts for trashing their team. Listen, just go out and win. And then
they were winning.
And we'll all shut up. Okay, they won a few regular season games. I mean, when was the last time the Detroit Lions won a playoff game?
There you go. We'll win the playoff game. Then
that's what I'm saying. Exactly. I mean, win a playoff game. Go to the NFC Championship game. Do something, I mean, as a Jet fan, I can't really defend my team. We stink. It's okay. What am I going to say? It's okay. I'm not attacking you personally. Let's get to Mike's crappy bets. By the way, I like Dallas as well. I think they wrap up home field on Monday night. Mike's crappy bets. That's right. It is that time of the week. Mike, what do you have for us?
Well, yeah, I just said one of them. I think Dallas ends up winning. They're giving a touchdown. They're giving 7, actually. But I think they end up just rolling away with this. So I'll take them with the points there. I also like the Bills giving 3.5 to Miami. That Matt Moore, having some success, a little bit of an aberration last week considering, the quality of play he was going against with your Jets there, Tuck. So I think the Bills defense is going to pose a little bit more of a challenge, even if they've struggled this year. And then Miami's run defense, biggest issue. Bills, obviously, one of the best running teams in all football. So I think the Bills end up another sort of run away with this one. And then I like the Vikings going to Green Bay. I know that they kind of looked like they almost gave up on their season a week ago against the Colts, but I just think that they have enough to stop what at least hold Aaron Rodgers to somewhere like a 20-point game, something like that. And then Packers defense has just been so porous on the back end. They have some success. I think the Vikings offense. I think they just keep it within a touchdown. That's all they need to do, and I like them to do that.
Renner, I'm going to play devil's advocate in one of those games.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 2 of my other picks that I actually like. Okay. The Buffalo Bills. Rex Ryan he's all but out of town. We all know that. He knows it. The players know it. Now, when he was coaching in New York, he had such a love affair with the players. The players, even though they knew he was on his way out, they played hard for him till the last whistle, and they really wanted to send him out as a winner. I don't think that same thing holds true in Buffalo, and the effort we've seen in Buffalo over the past few weeks has been, let's just say, less than stellar. And I'm staying away from the game. I'm not taking 3.5 points. They did beat the Browns. You're right. What was I thinking? But in the snow at home, I mean, they let Le'Veon Bell go for 300 yards. It was just ridiculous. But I'm staying away from the game. I'm not going to say it's not going to be a close game, but I'm not touching that game. The 2 games I do like though are the Monday night games, and I mentioned this a little bit already. I said I think the public perception is.
Isn't there just one?
I think the public perception is that. Denver is not as good, and KC is suddenly good now. They've won 3 of the last 4 games. And I think the same thing holds true with Pittsburgh. People still think of Pittsburgh as a Super Bowl contender. They still think of Ben Roethlisberger, and that Pittsburgh offense is this unbelievably great offense, and Baltimore is not that good. And I think these games are going to be much closer than people think. I could see KC winning by 1 or 2. but I'm getting 3.5.
Rockers.
I'll take Denver. And in Baltimore-Pittsburgh, the line is 5. When was the last
That's
time?
a big line.
When was the last time a Pittsburgh-Baltimore game was decided by more than a field goal? Give me Baltimore, and
We could
I'll
look that up.
run to the bank on that one. I mean, I'm sure there has been, but over the last 10 Pittsburgh-Baltimore games, what is the
last time
average?
was week 9.
Yeah, they won by a touchdown.
Right, but I mean, okay, so one game. I mean, I don't know. I like Baltimore getting 5 points here by a lot.
Baltimore did win though the last meeting, so
Right, so if anything, it proves my point. Anyway, let's get to our horrendous effort at rapid fire. Although it should be. These games are going to be played on Saturday, December 24th. And for the vast majority of these games are awful. Mike, you already gave us your take on Miami at Buffalo. You obviously like Buffalo. Sam, tell us a matchup to watch in this game.
Yeah, I like Buffalo as well, but not not plus the points. Like that seems kind of crazy to me.
you're crazy.
I think it's gonna be interesting watching Matt Moore. I thought he played pretty well last week. He's definitely getting stepped up in competition, going from the Browns defense to the Bills defense. But so far, I think he's played pretty well. We'll see if he can do it against an actual legit defense as opposed to whatever passes for one in Cleveland.
Yeah, you said Browns. Obviously played the Jets last week, but at this point in the season, there's really not that much difference to see the Jets.
Yeah,
The
Jets, might be worse.
Jets, Cleveland, same difference. Speaking of those Jets, they traveled to New England. Hard to paint a good picture on this one.
We can skip it, Tuck, if you don't want to.
Well, no, I mean, if you're looking for a reason to watch this game outside of fantasy, I am interested to see, if Bryce Petty and if Robbie Anderson can continue that chemistry he's developed with Bryce Petty, and can Anderson continue playing well? I mean, it looks like the Jets, while they can't find anybody in the draft from rounds 2 through 7, they routinely find undrafted rookies. People forget Damon Harrison was an undrafted player who starred for the New York Jets and obviously, clogs the middle for the New York Giants. Now, Robbie Anderson, an undrafted wide receiver, has looked pretty good. So I'll be interested to see how he plays. For me, I had the New England Patriots defense in one of my fantasy football finals, so it's going to be a tough week.
So, Tuck, a few weeks ago, we ranked the teams that are furthest away from contending, and I put the Jets at number 1 as the furthest away. Would you agree with that sentiment, or
the furthest away from contending?
the least hope?
You just ruined his Christmas.
No, I mean it's obvious. I mean, I know it. I don't know if they're the worst. I mean, they're definitely. It's so hard to rank like the bottom 5. I mean, I think they're definitely in that bottom basket. Are they further away than San Fran?
I made the point that they're probably not gonna, or there's a chance that they just might roll with Petty and Hackenberg still, and then at that point, just neither of those guys look like they're gonna actually be, and then that even puts you further behind the 8 ball, considering neither those guys don't look like they're actually gonna be should be franchise quarterbacks, but they're gonna try to make them such.
Right, and you think San Fran is just ready to move on?
Yeah, and San Francisco's going to go like Deshaun Watson or someone in the draft. So
that could be the case. We'll see how it plays out. New England's a 17-point favorite. I'm staying away from it. Tennessee look at Sam just like, what? 17 points? How is it even possible?
That's not even what. That was just ouch.
I mean, but this game could literally be. I mean, you know how the Patriots and the Jets are. This game could very easily be a 37-3 game.
Brandon Marshall last week was thrown at 11 times and caught 1 pass. I don't know what the record for futility is in terms of ratio of targets to receptions, but that's got to be pretty high.
Yeah, you can take a look in Jacksonville, which is where we're going to travel next. Allen Robinson has been challenging that futility all season long. Tennessee Titans coming off a big win. They travel to Jacksonville, and this looks like an easy win for them. But sometimes those kind of emotional victories. You look past the team. It's Christmas weekend. But this is a must-win. Mike, what does Tennessee have to do to win this game? Don't just say show up.
I think they just have to stick to running the ball consistently. I think they'll be able to, because I think rushing offense translates pretty well against poor rushing defenses. So basically, just give it to DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry 30+ times, and I think they'll be fine.
Did you just suggest that their run offense translates pretty well to poor rushing defenses?
Hey,
yes,
not the
that
best.
was my.
That's the hot take of this week.
He's not the best analyst in the world for nothing, okay?
Yeah.
What else are you going to get this?
So, but
Do
so
you
far, by the way,
understand-
you guys both like Buffalo. We all like New England, obviously. Sam?
Just for a minute, think how bad you need to be in order to make Allen Robinson look bad. This is the guy that made Christian Hackenberg look good. Like, things need to be going horrendously for Allen Robinson to be looking as bad as he is. Yeah, firing Gus Bradley, things are going to change. I don't know if that's going to give them a kind of short-term boost, or if that's going to be, an end of season thing. I think Mike's right. I think their powerful run game will do well against a weak run defense. So that's probably going to be enough.
Minnesota at Green Bay. Mike, we already got your take on this one. Sam, you wrote a great article about why Ty Montgomery should be touching the ball 20 times a week. You were way ahead of the curve. You can check back, go 6-7 weeks ago, guys. You can go back to when Ty Montgomery was drafted. And Sam was
don't
on.
Give this to Sam again.
Sam was on Montgomery being a running back, and we saw it last weekend. And amazingly,
go back way before the draft.
Okay, I'm already boosting you up. Anyway, though, I see on Twitter people still going at you like, oh, come on, Montgomery's just average. Okay, well, this average running back just torched Chicago last week for 160 yards. Now, I know Chicago is not the best defense in the league, but still, he made some fantastic moves and some great plays. And, he's good between the tackles. He's good when he bounces outside. Because of the fact that he was practicing as a receiver, his receiving and route running skills have improved to the point where he's now a good pass catching running back.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was natural position all along. At Stanford, he looked like a guy that they just didn't know what to do with him. It looked like a guy where they had a running back, but for whatever reason, they didn't want to play him at running back. So they were lining him up as a wildcat quarterback. They were putting him out in bubble screens and just giving him a couple of routes to run, letting him return kicks and punts and that kind of thing. He says, I think that he wanted to play running back for whatever reason. They never had him back there. But then, it took a while for him to move him there in the NFL. But once they did, we're starting to see that this guy is a running back. I mean, this is 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's basically built like Adrian Peterson. It makes sense that he's a natural runner. And at the moment, all we're seeing is that he hasn't had the ball enough to really prove that he can be a dominant running back. But from everything we've seen, he looks like a pretty good one. So yeah, I think they found a guy that if they really want to use heavily is the spark that offense has been looking for. I think the rest of them, Aaron Rodgers has been playing better. The unit generally is improved, but with Montgomery as a legit rushing weapon, this offense is so much more dangerous. And the way Aaron Rodgers is playing right now, I mean, they could absolutely eviscerate this Minnesota defense that really isn't playing particularly well at the moment. I mean, they gave up some ridiculous plays against Indianapolis. And then even when they actually had them stopped, Linval Joseph attempted to hurdle the line of scrimmage and block a kick, which went about as well as you would imagine a 320-pound guy trying to leap clean over an offensive line would go. And not only did he fail to block the kick, but obviously he canned the center, so got penalized for it, and they ended up scoring a touchdown instead of a field goal. So this Vikings team, I think, is pretty close to being completely checked out for the season, and Green Bay is pretty close to being the other end. It's on fire and looking to make a playoff run. So that does not bode well for a close game in my eyes.
Had the Minnesota
should have known that talking about the Vikings, we couldn't do rapid fire with Sam.
Of course not.
Should have known that wouldn't have gone well.
The injuries on the Vikings side of the defensive side of the ball certainly have affected them as well, right, Sam?
I don't even know how much injuries have affected them on defense. I think they just got a lot of guys that aren't playing that well. I mean, Anthony Barr hasn't been anything like the same guy from a year ago. Injuries have had some issues somewhere along the lines, but I don't think that defense is playing nearly as well as it was at the start of the year. And even then, I don't think it was playing as well as the production they were getting.
You see that Mike Zimmer actually acknowledged that Anthony Barr is not playing well? If Mike Zimmer actually acknowledges that you're not playing well when he refused to say such about, TJ Clemmings, Matt Khalil, that sort of stuff, then you're probably not playing well.
Yes.
By the way, just so you guys know, I'm going to read this for you. This was a little thing. Apparently, Mike McCarthy thinks there's more to do with Ty Montgomery.
Well, yeah.
So
Significantly more.
We had those takes already.
Yeah. By the way,
Consulting.
next year though, Mike, it becomes interesting in both Minnesota and Green Bay. In Green Bay, you suddenly look at this. They can finally get rid of James Starks, and if you think about a running back tandem of Eddie Lacy alongside Ty Montgomery,
I think Lacey's gone though.
You think he's done?
I mean, he's a free agent. I'm not sure there's going to be a huge demand, but I think just with his weight issues, I think the coaching staff's probably fed up with him at this point.
He played well this year, though. I'm surprised, but I guess that could be.
He did, but I still think with all that went on, he probably is. I hope they roll with Montgomery. He's been ridiculously good. He's averaging like 6 yards after contact per attempt. To call him average is just, from what we've seen from him, is crazy.
I mean, it's too small a sample size to anoint him as this amazing player, but at the same time, what we've seen, he's certainly been good. Hey, Sam, very quick hot take. Who is the quarterback next year? Actually, I should say this. Who is the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings in 2018?
2018. As much as it pains me, I think he's probably not on the roster. I would say Sam Bradford probably starts next year. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, because it's a horrible way to go out. But that injury that Teddy Bridgewater had really does feel like the kind of one that's going to end a career. I don't know if he's going to make it all the way back from that. So, Bradford probably ends up staying there for next year. The offense, I don't think, will be fixed next year, at which point he will get a significant portion of the blame, and they'll let him go and look for a quarterback.
If the Vikings don't make the playoffs this year, is that Bradford trade the worst trade of all time, basically, or one of the worst trades of all time?
I think the trade is still good. It's just that everything else fell apart around it.
Is it good?
Yeah.
It seems like it's pretty bad
put it this
right
way,
now.
If Teddy Bridgewater doesn't make a bank, you still need a quarterback. So you have one in Bradford.
John
He's
Hill,
not
is
the
that good?
problem.
That's what I'm saying. Like you got a quarterback, but if he's still not doing anything for you, you just wasted a first round pick then at that point.
Well, or you use the first round pick to get a quarterback, and now you can set about fixing the things that are actually wrong with the team.
I'll put it this way.
Okay, yeah, but they don't have that pick then.
I don't think it's close to being the worst trade in the history. We can make a list of trades that are probably far worse.
This is a team that made the Herschel Walker trade. It's not even they've got a long way to eclipse their own worst trade.
Right. Let's travel to Cleveland now. For those people out there that are still in their Survivor leagues, and for anybody who doesn't know what a Survivor league, basically you have to pick a team each week that wins. That's it. But you can't take a team more than once. And at this point of the season, if you are still in those survivors, the pickings are somewhat slim. Usually you've already taken New England, you've taken Seattle, you've taken Dallas. You might be looking at, and I know a lot of people are taking San Diego. Mike, tell me why San Diego is going to lose this weekend.
They are not. I'm actually in a league with two people who have picked against Cleveland every single week when possible, when they didn't double up on divisional games. So, and they're both still alive. So
obviously,
it's good strategy, and I recommend it this week. San Diego,
Sam,
Cleveland's just their defense is just completely untalented. Like it's just no talent anywhere along the defense besides Jamie Collins.
Sam,
I said a few weeks
tell me
ago,
why Cleveland loses. Why Cleveland wins.
I don't think they do. I said a few weeks ago, I think there's a win somewhere in this round schedule, but I've just given up looking for it every single time. I think they have a shot at winning a game. They end up, a touchdown too far away. Having said that, I think they're planning on dumping RG3, are they not? They're going to go back to Cody Kessler. Cody Kessler is at least the best quarterback for them to potentially win a game. He's the one guy that's done consistently positive things for that offense. Wow. The dog agrees.
I have a dog. Someone just went in the elevator.
Dog pound. The dog wants this Cleveland win. I think if they get Cody Kessler, he's the one guy that can actually move the ball. He may be limited. He may not be able to do the spectacular things they want from that offense, but he's the one guy I think that could actually put them in a position to win a game, and then obviously the defense will lose it for them.
I think if Cody Kessler plays, I think they can win. And by the way, I have 3 dogs. Renner has 1.
Yeah.
Do you ever hear
and he can't keep it under control.
Yeah, do you ever hear my dogs barking? No. Okay?
My place is tiny. It's like got to stand right next to me. I'm sorry.
Whatever. I don't want to hear it, okay? Excuses. Let's travel to Chicago. The Redskins just falling apart. Monday night, they just looked awful. What happened, and can they rebound, Sam?
Yeah, I've gone Washington this week, but I think this is a close one. Again, Matt Barkley continues to play reasonably well. He made some mistakes. This is still Matt Barkley. He's not turned into Tom Brady or anything, but he looked pretty good against the Green Bay Packers team and had the Bears firmly in that game for a large portion of the time. And this is a Washington team that's had struggles, especially on defense. I think he could do some damage against them. And then you're up to what are you going to get from Kirk Cousins in that Washington offense? I think this is a really intriguing game and one that could easily go either way.
The Matt Barkley thing is really interesting to me because it's kind of unprecedented. I really don't think I've seen anything like it at least in our grading system. Basically, a guy come out of nowhere to start 4 games, and in those 4 games, just be, grade well in every single game, not really have a down game in any of them. When no one thought, he bounced from Philadelphia to Arizona to Chicago in the course of 4 years now that he's been in the NFL, and no one recognized that if at any point either of those teams, Arizona or Philadelphia, thought he could have been a guy who could step in and play like this, they would have kept him. And now all of a sudden he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. And what do the Bears do with him? What does, the market look like for him? It's really interesting. I think actually next week will be his biggest test, obviously playing against Minnesota. That's the game I want to watch to see if he is for real or not. This one, I think he could have some success against Washington with the struggles they've had on their pass defense outside of Josh Norman. So I do think, though, that in the end, Washington wins it because, like I've said before, best offense outside of the quarterback running back position.
I'm happy for Barkley. We talked about Matt Moore last week, somehow securing himself just like millions and millions of dollars, being this career backup essentially. And, he comes on the field last week and plays well. Barkley, if anything, has made himself a lot of money for many years as as at least a backup quarterback in the NFL.
It's really interesting in terms of, we've seen this before in the NFL, probably predating PFF, but there are players that have had that kind of thing before where they've come in early, they've been horrendous, and then they've been consigned to a career bouncing around or being on the bench as a journeyman, and then they've gotten another shot somewhere down the line, and it's worked out better this time because quarterbacks develop, especially today with the differences between college offenses and pro style offenses. There's so much you need to get better at to make the jump from college to pro that sometimes it's going to take a while. And you kind of assume that if a guy is of a certain standard when you first throw him in, there's just no coming back from that. And that's kind of what I thought with Barkley. He was so bad that first year that you're thinking there's basically no way he could get to an NFL standard because the leap he needs to make from that level of terrible to even passable, it's a chasm. So he was forgotten about. I think the league felt the same way, and he bounced around and never really showed a whole lot in preseason or anything like that either. And then this year he looked pretty good in preseason, still ended up getting cut by the Cardinals. Winds up in Chicago, gets only on the field because they lost 3 different quarterbacks. But suddenly you're seeing a completely different guy. You're seeing a guy that can read defenses, that can deliver the ball more or less where it needs to go. His arm looks better than it looked in years past. He seems to have not become Aaron Rodgers or anything, but he's had a little bit of that thing where he's got a noticeably better arm now than he did when he was younger. And about the only thing wrong with his play at the moment is you'll get the occasional poor decision, and he seems to miss high a little bit, which is a little bit frustrating, but certainly not, an Achilles heel.
One more thing I wanted to talk about in this game. Jordan Reed last week threw a punch at Kirk Coleman, hit him in the face mask, obviously got ejected. Is that the dumbest thing you can do on a football field? Because 1, you're not going to hurt the other guy. 2, the chances are you're probably going to hurt your own hand more than, the other guy. And then 3, it's an automatic ejection. Can you think of something dumber that you could possibly do on a football field than throw a punch?
On a football
lining
field?
up in the neutral zone on 4th and 2.
Those are nose tackles jumping off sides is always good too.
Yeah, no, we were actually watching the game, and I was thinking the same exact thing. I grew up being a hockey player, and you just wonder, it's like, what are you punching the guy in the face mask for? What is that going to accomplish? Let's travel to Carolina, where the Atlanta Falcons are traveling as well. The Atlanta Falcons are kind of my 2016 version of what the Panthers were in 2015. 15-1, and yet I never believed in them. And somehow I just never believe in the Falcons. And my first instinct in this game is, hell, the Panthers are still playing hard. Falcons aren't as good as their record or as good as they look on occasion, and they're going to lose this game. But I've been wrong every week with the Falcons. I've been wrong all season. So, I'm just going to stop even thinking about this team. I don't even know what to say. No, yeah, we're just skipping it. No, Sam, tell me, can the Falcons, is this a trap game for the Falcons, traveling to Carolina?
I don't think it's a trap game. I think it's a legit contest. I mean, Carolina are still playing hard. They are still dangerous. This is still has the makings, or has the majority of its makeup from a Super Bowl losing team a year ago. It's definitely a team it's definitely a game they need to pay attention in and actually concentrate on beating. It's amazing when anyone who remembers the old premium where it was plus and minuses and green grades and red grades, when you clicked onto this game last week and how the 49ers played them, it was just a wall of green for the Atlanta offense. Like, everything was positive. They just absolutely steamrolled the 49ers defense, which is pretty terrible, especially against the kind of offense that Atlanta runs. Carolina's is not going to roll over the same way, but this is a really, really good offense, and it's very tough to match up with. I do like the Falcons in this. I think they've been the class of that division all year. I don't think that's going to change, but it's going to be a close game.
Mike, Falcons or Carolina?
I'm taking Carolina. No great reasoning behind it, I'll say. Just like the way Cam Newton looked last week. I think he's going to have a good one against the Falcons defense. I mean, Falcons defense still not by any means a good defense, especially with Trufant been out the last, being out for the rest of the year now. And been out for the past handful of weeks. I just don't think they'll be able to stop, Cam Newton. And at that point, shootout, I'll take the home team.
Yeah, I like Carolina if Kuechly plays. Kuechly has cleared concussion protocol, but they kept him out last week. They might shut him down for the season. We'll see if he plays or not. If he plays, I like Carolina.
Let him play.
Indianapolis at Oakland. Indianapolis just unleashed their offense last week versus Minnesota. Do they continue this week in Oakland? And also, if you're an Oakland fan, you've got to be a little concerned. Can Derek Carr and that offense right the ship? They've been awful the last 2 weeks, Sam.
Yeah, they haven't been good, but I think that offensive line is still good. It's still able to give them the foundation to work from, which is always going to help you in pretty much any game, especially against that Indianapolis defense, which is still terrible. So if nothing else, they should be able to pound the ball pretty relentlessly against the Colts, and they really shouldn't need Derek Carr to have to do that much. The other side of the ball is more interesting, I think, because this Oakland defense has consistently all year been, I think, worse than the sum of its parts. They've got a lot of guys playing really well, and it never seems to actually materialize into this really good defense. And Andrew Luck had the kind of game against the Vikings where he just was on point, hit everything, put the ball where it needed to go most of the time. A few little misses there, but that's the signature of his game this season, and why we think this is the best year of his career. He's not making any more huge throws, and he's not necessarily making that many more, or that fewer bad decisions, but it's the routine misses that he's dramatically improved on, the unforced errors. I think when he's been kept entirely clean, his completion percentage has jumped up by almost 10%. His passer rating has jumped up 10 points. Just the plays that he used to blow for no particular reason in seasons past, he's not really doing that as much this year. And that's a huge part of being efficient as a quarterback and getting the offense on the right page.
So who do we like?
Oakland, purely because the difference between that Oakland offensive line and that Indianapolis defensive line is just this huge chasm. They can run the ball 50 times in this game and still win, I think.
Nothing sneaky about that, huh?
I'm going to lean Oakland as well, but I could. It's the kind of game where I could see a really good Andrew Luck game turning them over.
Yeah, I think Derek Carr is going to have to play better this week if they're going to win, because I think Indianapolis is going to put up some points. Tampa Bay is in a must-win situation as they travel to New Orleans. Mike, give us your quick take on this one.
And this one's a toss-up for me. I really have no bearing whatsoever on what either team will do. Tampa Bay is really interesting because their offense really hasn't been great. Their defense has been the reason they've been winning these games lately. They're in the playoff hunt at this point. Yeah, I can't really make heads or tails of this one. So Sam, you say something, and then I'll try to piggyback on top
essentially,
of that.
basically, if it's not like this team has a really good run offense, this team has a really bad run defense, you got nothing.
I'll come up with something better after Sam.
So last week,
you're going to cover Arizona, Seattle, so do that one. Go ahead, Sam.
Last week against the Dallas Cowboys, the right tackle problem in Tampa Bay turned David Irving into like Reggie White for the course of a game. They had him on the edge there, and he was just absolutely tearing Gosder Cherilus to pieces. They eventually sat Cherilus down, brought in somebody else who didn't do a whole lot better. Cameron Jordan has been maybe the best defensive player in the league for the past 3 months. They don't have anybody that can stop him, even when they have their ideal 100% healthy line. If Gosder Cherilus is out there, that is train wreck city. I mean, that's one of those matchups that single-handedly can derail an offense all by itself.
Yep, Sam's exactly right. That's why New Orleans going to win, 100%.
There you go.
Agree.
I like Tampa Bay. Arizona at Seattle. Man, the wheels have come off the track in Arizona. It's nothing resembling anything. I mean, they can't defend anymore. They don't play well on offense. Carson Palmer has been terrible. What happens here in Seattle? I mean, these two teams have traditionally played hard-fought, close games. In fact, they tied earlier this year in what was just a 6-6 kick fest, or a lack of kicking, I should say. Anyway, does Seattle blow them out, Sam?
I don't know about that. Carson Palmer's had a season a lot like Ben Roethlisberger, where it hasn't been all bad. It's just been good then bad, and never won for particularly long. This past week, he was actually really, really good against the Saints. It's just that his defense gave up more than 40 points as well, and JJ Nelson dropped a couple of absolute killers, like plays that will. You can't drop those plays if you're expecting to win the game. You know, one of them down the left sideline late in the game, I think probably would have been a touchdown, or at least a huge gain that put them in the position to score again. And instead, those are the kind of things that just kill teams. So at the very least, with Carson Palmer playing like that, hopefully you won't get another 6-6 game. But the two teams are set up kind of similar in that they both have problems on the offensive line. Seattle, at least, I think, is far better at overcoming those problems on the offensive line, but it's really the root cause of both teams' problems.
Who do we like then? You like Seattle?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, I like Seattle as well. I think Thomas Rawls play a little bigger. He'll have an impact in this one. Didn't play, obviously, in the last meeting. I think it just adds a little bit more juice in the run game, a little bit more big playability than what they had. So I think they score at least something. Whereas I just don't see the Cardinals scoring, much again. That offense, when they go up against good defenses, Carson Palmer just implodes.
Back in July and August, a lot of people predicted Tyler Lockett would be a breakout player this year. And due to injuries and bad offensive line, possibly Russell Wilson's injury as well, he looked pretty pedestrian for the most of the season. But the last 3 or 4 weeks, he has been great. And he has been contributing in different ways, whether it's a 75-yard rush for a touchdown, or last week he goes for over 100 and a touchdown. He has been dynamic, and he gives him another weapon. With him and Jimmy Graham and Doug Baldwin and Rawls. I like what Seattle is doing, and I think Seattle wins this game going away. Mike, I have saved the game of the week for you. That's right, the game of the week. The San Francisco 49ers. It is the Battle of California. San Fran travels down south against those Los Angeles Rams. Who wins this game and why?
These teams last played week 1, obviously that late Monday night game, and I had to work that game, and it started at 10 p.m. or whatever, and was legitimately one of the worst games I've ever seen in my entire life. I think anyone that watched that game would feel the same sentiment, because it was just not sometimes, that just because it's a low scoring game doesn't mean it's bad football. This was legitimately quarterbacks missing open receivers, quarterbacks, misreading coverages left and right, guys fumbling, that sort of stuff. Awful game. I expect the exact same thing to happen this weekend.
Who wins?
I'll take LA again. They won last time.
Sam,
oh
who do
no,
you
they
like?
didn't win last time.
No, they
Excuse
got-
me. I'll
they-
take
not
LA
only
for
did they
Jared
not-
Goff.
not
A
only
little
did they
change
not-
in quarterback this time.
I was going to say, not only did they not
That-
win,
Goff gets a W.
they got shut out by the 49ers and looked terrible and humiliated. Part of the reason why I'm actually taking the Rams right now, I think the Rams,
Payback.
I think Gurley has his 100-yard game of the year, and I think he looks good this weekend against the 49ers' porous Swiss cheese run defense. I think Goff has a decent game. I think Kenny Britt's going to be okay, and I think the Rams win this game going away. Sam?
I think Goff is the reason they lose the game because Goff has been horrendous. With the exception of like one nice throw on a crossing route last week, he just looked terrible. I mean, he was missing completely wide open receivers, was doing nothing. The offensive line is bad. The running game isn't there. The defense is good, but it can be exposed if you've got anything to your offense, which Seattle did. San Francisco has less, but Colin Kaepernick played actually reasonably well against Atlanta. Man, that dog is into it today.
Yeah.
Kaepernick played pretty well against Atlanta. I don't know that this Rams defense has that much more about it. They have a better defensive line, but the secondary and the back seven is weaker now that they've lost guys and they're struggling a little more. So I think Kaepernick could have the kind of game where he takes off, makes some plays with his legs, just put something on the board, at which point you're down to this Rams team trying to show something that they really haven't shown all season.
Osweiler is on the bench. Savage is in. It's about time. The Houston Texans host the Cincinnati Bengals. Sam, quick take on this one.
Do we have to?
No, we don't have to. Mike, you got anything for us?
Yeah, Tom Savage is the savior for the Houston Texans offense. He can't be worse, so that's good for the Texans offense. He literally cannot be worse. So,
but that is literally about the only thing you can say from him at the moment is that he probably can't be worse than Brock Osweiler because we really haven't seen anything from Tom Savage either. I think Houston probably win the game if for no other reason than, like Mike says, they've removed the biggest problem they had, which was horrendous quarterback play. I think the rest of the team is reasonably good, but they've been hamstrung by bad quarterbacks. Bengals, I just don't think they're that great. So with a bit better quarterback play, I say Houston win it.
Bill O'Brien, the coach of the year. If somehow the Houston Texans win that division with that bevy of quarterbacks under center, it'll be amazing. That is going to do it for us, guys. As always, if you want to get a hold of us, you can tweet us at PFF_Mike, at PFF_Sam. I'm at Tuck on Sports. Do us a favor, head over to iTunes, write us a review. We really do appreciate it. And, of course, from everybody at PFF, from Sam, from Mike, and from myself, we wish you happy holidays, happy New Year, all that good stuff. We are back at it next week for what will be Week 17 of the NFL season. Goodbye, guys.
Take it easy.